Welcome to How Sugar Affects Your Brain. Is it really that bad for you? Our journey begins with the oldest craving in the world, the sweet taste that shaped human evolution itself. Picture this. Morning light filters through your kitchen window. You pour a cup of coffee, dark, steaming, comforting. You reach for the sugar jar, watching the white crystals fall in a delicate swirl. You stir, take a sip, and feel it immediately. That little rush of pleasure, that quiet sigh of comfort. It's such a small moment. But inside your brain, something big is happening. A cascade of chemical reactions begins. Neurons light up in the reward centers. Dopamine floods your system. Your mood lifts. Your focus sharpens. Your brain says, yes, more of that, please. And there, in that instant of sweetness, lies one of the most powerful forces in human biology, the craving for sugar. The oldest craving in the world for most of human history, sugar was rare. It came from ripe fruit, from honey hidden in wild hives, from plants you had to climb, dig, or fight to reach. To our ancestors, sweetness meant survival, a quick source of energy in a world where every calorie mattered. Our brains evolved to love it, to chase it, to remember exactly where we found it, a ripe fig, a drop of honey. These were treasures. Sweetness meant life. But then something changed. In the last few centuries, sugar went from rare to everywhere. We refined it, packaged it, multiplied it, and built industries around it. Today, it's in everything. Not just candy and desserts, but bread, sauces, salad dressings, cereals, and even healthy snacks. It hides behind dozens of names: sucrose, fructose, maltose, corn syrup, evaporated cane juice. And our ancient brains, still wired for scarcity, are breed. The modern paradox: we know sugar gives us pleasure, and yet it leaves us drained. It comforts us, but it also controls us. It brings energy, but it steals it back. It's both friend and foe. Around the world, scientists, doctors, and everyday people are asking the same question: is sugar really that bad for us, or is it just misunderstood? The answer, as we'll discover, is both simple and complicated. Sugar isn't evil, it's essential. In the right amount, in the right form. Your brain literally runs on glucose, a form of sugar. Without it, you couldn't think, move, or dream. But too much, too often, turns nourishment into noise. It hijacks the brain's reward system, distorts hunger, fogs focus, and over time can even alter memory and emotion. It's not just what sugar does to your body, it's what it does to your mind. The invisible addiction: we don't talk about sugar the way we talk about alcohol or nicotine, but in the brain, it behaves surprisingly similar. Every sweet bite triggers dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in motivation, love, and addiction. That's why one piece of cake can feel like comfort, but 3 pieces can feel like compulsion. It's not weakness, it's wiring. Our brains evolved to light up when something tastes sweet. That surge of dopamine was once a reward for finding fruit in the forest. Now, with sugar everywhere in coffee, sodas, pastries, energy bars, our reward system is overstimulated, flooded daily. Over time, it starts to desensitize, demanding more to feel the same pleasure. That's how sweetness becomes a cycle, not of joy, but of chasing joy. The emotional connection, and yet sugar is not just chemistry. It's emotion. It's birthday cake and hot chocolate. It's the smell of cookies in a childhood kitchen, the comfort of dessert after a long day. It's love, nostalgia, reward, and relief all in one bite. No wonder it's so hard to let go. Sugar doesn't just feed our cells, it feeds our stories. So this isn't a story about guilt. It's a story about understanding, about learning how something so small can shape so much of our behavior, our focus, our emotions, even our aging. What this journey will explore over the next hour will travel through science and story to uncover what sugar truly does to the brain. We'll explore 1. Why we crave sweetness, the biology and evolution behind it. 2. The pleasure loop: how sugar triggers dopamine and drives habit. 3. The energy crash: why it sharpens focus and then steals it. For the emotional trap: how stress and sadness make us reach for more. Leaky teenage brain, why young minds are especially vulnerable. 6. The long-term effects, how too much sugar can cloud memory and fuel disease. 7. The balance, when sugar becomes friend, not foe. Each chapter will bring you closer to understanding your own cravings, not to fight them, but to make peace with them. A note of compassion: you don't have to fear sweetness. It's part of what makes life enjoyable. The goal isn't to quit sugar forever. It's to see it clearly, to take back the choice. Because sugar itself isn't the villain. The real danger lies in the silence, in eating without awareness, in living on autopilot. Once you see what's happening inside your brain, you regain control. You can still have the dessert, but you'll have it consciously, not compulsively. The invitation: so as we begin, take another sip of your coffee, taste the sweetness, really taste it. Notice how it feels, how it lingers, how it warms. That tiny pleasure is ancient, beautiful, and deeply human. It's not wrong to enjoy it. The question we'll explore is this: at what point does pleasure become persuasion? When does sweetness stop serving us and start ruling us? That's the mystery we're about to unfold: the science, the psychology, and the soul of sugar. Part 1: The Evolution of Sweetness. Why we crave it. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself thousands of years ago, long before supermarkets, soda machines, or candy aisles. You are walking through a forest at the end of a long day. You're tired, hungry, and your body is desperate for energy. Then through the trees you spot something golden, a beehive, glistening with honey. You climb, reach in carefully, and taste the sweetness. You the odds aid. The other case, telling in gold of or a Tyson, the sweetness assassiness Korean brought that or Carl the board you took me off with you're so you're out. This is no let's quote with you're instantly your body lights up. Your tongue sends a signal to your brain. Sweetness means energy. Your neurons release dopamine, a little burst of pleasure, a mental note that says, remember this place. That ancient rush, that spark of reward, is the same one we feel today when we bite into a piece of cake or sip a caramel latte. The only difference is that our ancestors had to climb trees for honey, while we only have to open a wrapper. The ancient survival code: sweetness was once a sign of safety. Bitter flavors often warned of poison, sour meant spoiled food, but sweet? Sweet meant ripe fruit, carbohydrates, quick energy. For early humans, finding sugar could mean surviving another day. Evolution shaped our brains to reward that discovery. A taste of sugar signaled abundance after scarcity. It taught the brain, this is good. Seek it again. In a world of scarcity, that reward system made perfect sense. But in the modern world, a world of abundance, that same system can turn against us. The chemistry of craving: when we taste sugar, the tongue's sweet receptors send a signal to the brain's reward center, the nucleus accumbens. Dopamine is released, and for a brief moment, we feel joy. It's the brain's way of saying, you did well. This is valuable. The problem is, dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's about learning. Every time sugar triggers that reward, your brain takes note. Remember this. Repeat this dot. That's how habits are born. Our ancestors rarely found sugar, so those bursts of dopamine were rare and balanced. Today, we stimulate that system dozens of times a day. Cereal, snacks, soda, dessert, until it becomes a constant background hum of craving. What once guided survival now fuels addiction. The dopamine trap: dopamine was designed for discovery, not repetition. Its purpose is to motivate you to seek, not to sit still. But when sugar is constantly available, your brain's reward circuit becomes overstimulated. Receptors begin to downregulate, meaning they stop responding as strongly. The more sugar you eat, the less satisfying it becomes, and so you need more to feel the same pleasure. This is why cravings grow over time, why one cookie turns into a box, one soda into a habit. It's not weakness, it's wiring. Your brain is just trying to get back to that first perfect high. A species built for scarcity: imagine a creature that evolved to survive famine. Now place it in a world of endless food. That's us. For hundreds of thousands of years, our survival depended on finding energy-dense foods, fruits, roots, honey, nuts, meat. Sugar was a reward because it was rare, it signaled safety, abundance, and opportunity to store fat for the next hunger season. Our DNA hasn't caught up to modern life. The same instincts that once kept us alive now pull us toward overconsumption. Evolution didn't design us for supermarkets, it designed us for struggle. The culture of sweetness sugar didn't just change our biology, it shaped our civilization. When people learned to refine sugar from sugarcane, it became one of the world's first global commodities. It drove trade, colonization, and even slavery. It fueled empires and economies. By the 18th century, sugar was called white gold. And yet, as it became cheaper and more accessible, something strange happened. The human body, once grateful for rare sweetness, began to pay a price for its constant presence. By the 20th century, sugar consumption had skyrocketed. In some countries, people were eating more than 100 pounds of added sugar per person each year. The brain, still wired for scarcity, couldn't keep up with the flood. We created a world our biology was never meant to handle. The sweet illusion, here's the paradox. Sugar doesn't just taste good. It feels good. That's why it's so hard to separate emotion from biology. A bite of cake isn't just energy. It's celebration. A spoon of ice cream isn't just calories. It's comfort after a hard day. Sugar became woven into every moment of human connection. Birthdays, weddings, holidays, even grief. We celebrate life with sweetness. And yet, as scientists have begun to understand, the very thing that lifts our mood in the short term can cloud our mind in the long term. Excess sugar not only overwhelms the body, it overstimulates the brain. Natural versus refined sweetness. It's important to remember that not all sugars are the same. The fructose in an apple comes wrapped in fiber, water, and vitamins. Nature's built-in speed limiter. It digests slowly, releasing energy steadily. Refined sugar, on the other hand, in sodas, candies, pastries, hits the bloodstream almost instantly. It's like dumping a whole bucket of fuel into an engine built for a teaspoon. The brain lights up, then burns out. That's the difference between nourishment and stimulation. One sustains, the other exhausts. The hidden modern hunger, here's the irony. In the age of abundance, many of us are starving, not for calories, but for control. We eat sugar to feel better, but we end up feeling worse. We crave sweetness, but lose sensitivity to life's natural sweetness. The taste of fruit, the calm of rest, the joy of genuine connection. Our brains, conditioned by excess, keep asking for more, not because they need energy, but because they've forgotten what balance feels like. The first step back isn't cutting sugar completely. It's remembering why we crave it in the first place. A survival instinct, not a sin. Your love for sugar isn't a flaw. It's an ancient instinct doing its job too well. You're not broken. You're human. Your biology simply hasn't caught up to your environment. Understanding that truth is empowering. It means you can stop fighting yourself and start working with your body, calming the reward system instead of punishing it. When you understand why your brain lights up for sweetness, you can begin to choose when and how to enjoy it with awareness instead of guilt. The turning point, the story of sugar, is really the story of evolution meeting technology, of ancient instincts in a modern world. We're the only species that can consciously rewrite that story. We can choose pleasure without addiction, satisfaction without excess, balance without denial. But first, we have to understand what sugar really does once it enters the brain, the chemistry of craving, the loop that keeps us coming back. That's where we go next. In the next part of our journey, we'll open the door to the brain itself, to the rush of dopamine, the pleasure pathways, and the science of why sugar feels so irresistible. Part 2, the neurochemistry of sugar, the pleasure loop. Close your eyes and imagine the moment you take that first bite of chocolate cake. Soft, sweet, melting. For a few seconds, everything else disappears. The to-do lists, the fatigue, the noise of the world. You feel warmth, comfort, and something close to happiness. That feeling isn't just in your imagination. It's chemistry. precise, predictable, powerful. The pleasure switch. As soon as sugar touches your tongue, a message travels along the gustatory nerve to your brain's nucleus accumbens, one of the central hubs of the reward system. This is the same area that lights up when we fall in love, win a game, or hear our favorite song. Within seconds, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter of pleasure and motivation. Dopamine tells your brain, this feels good. Remember it. Do it again. That's the start of what scientists call the pleasure loop, the cycle of craving, reward, and repetition that drives much of human behavior. The loop explained, here's how it works. 1 cue, you see, smell, or think of something sweet. 2 craving, dopamine spikes in anticipation, not just in reward. 3 consumption, you take a bite, dopamine floods your system. For reward, you feel pleasure and relief. 5 memory. Your brain stores the experience, linking sugar to happiness. 6 repetition. Next time you're stressed, bored, or tired, your brain whispers, a little sweetness will fix it. It's not conscious, it's automatic. Your brain learns that sugar equals comfort and comfort equals sugar. Over time, that loop becomes habit, and like all habits, it's hard to break because it's designed to save effort. Your brain doesn't want to think about pleasure, it wants to repeat it. Dopamine. The double-edged molecule dopamine isn't just about reward, it's about motivation and learning. It evolved to help us survive, to make sure we remembered where to find food, water, and connection. But in today's world, where sugar is everywhere, dopamine becomes overstimulated. You're not getting small bursts anymore. You're getting floods every day, and the brain adapts. Just like with caffeine or alcohol, it starts to reduce the number of dopamine receptors. The same amount of sugar gives you less pleasure than before. You need more to get the same feeling. This is called tolerance, and it's the root of craving. Sugar versus drugs. The brain's reaction, it might sound extreme, but brain scans show that sugar activates the same neural pathways as cocaine and nicotine. Not to the same intensity, but in the same pattern. In lab studies, rats given access to sugar show withdrawal symptoms when it's taken away. Of course, sugar isn't a drug in the traditional sense. It doesn't intoxicate or destroy the brain, but it manipulates the same biological systems that make substances addictive. It taps into the brain's natural reward circuits and holds them hostage. That's why so many people describe being hooked on sweets. They're not exaggerating. Their brains are literally wired for it. The engineered craving food scientists understand this chemistry deeply. In fact, they use it to design products with the perfect bliss point, the precise combination of sugar, fat, and salt that triggers maximum pleasure without overwhelming the senses. When you eat these foods, dopamine spikes sharply, but the affect fades fast. That fleeting pleasure keeps you coming back for more, not because you're greedy, but because your brain believes it's chasing survival. The modern food industry has learned how to press every ancient button in the human brain, perfectly, repeatedly, profitably. The illusion of control, you've probably said it yourself, just one bite. But often that one bite becomes 3, then 5. By the time you realize it, the bag or box is empty. That isn't lack of willpower, it's a biochemical feedback loop. When sugar hits your brain, it activates dopamine and opioids, the body's own natural painkillers. Together, they create a euphoric calm, the same chemical signature found in pleasure and relief. Once the high fades, dopamine drops below baseline, leaving you feeling dull or restless. Your brain, craving equilibrium, says more, and the loop starts again. The hidden craving cycle, here's the pattern many of us live in, often without realizing. Morning, coffee with sugar, dopamine surge, feels good. Midday, crash. You reach for a snack or soda, quick relief. Afternoon, another dip. Maybe a sweet treat to focus. Evening, comfort food or dessert. Calm, then guilt. This pattern repeats daily, a slow, quiet conditioning of your nervous system. Your brain begins to expect sweetness as a reward for stress, fatigue, or emotion. It becomes part of your coping mechanism. Breaking the cycle isn't just about eating less sugar, it's about breaking that emotional contract. The emotional high, the connection between sugar and emotion, runs deep. When life feels heavy, sugar provides a temporary lightness. When we're lonely, it gives us warmth. When we're anxious, it offers comfort. But chemically, this comfort is short-lived. Each rush of dopamine is followed by a rebound dip, a small moment of chemical emptiness that can feel like sadness or irritability. You're not just chasing pleasure. You're avoiding the crash that follows it. That's how sugar quietly turns from a treat into a trap. Awareness as antidote. Here's the good news. Once you understand the loop, you can step outside of it. Awareness changes chemistry. When you notice the craving and name it, "This is my brain asking for dopamine," you shift control from instinct to insight. The craving doesn't disappear, but it loses power, replacing the sugar reward with another dopamine source. A walk, music, sunlight, laughter teaches your brain that pleasure doesn't have to come in packets or spoons. Over time, your dopamine system resets. You begin to feel pleasure from smaller, simpler things again. That's recovery, not from addiction, but from overstimulation. The deeper truth: sugar isn't bad. It's just too powerful for how available it's become. It plays on the oldest parts of the human brain, the ones that can't tell the difference between survival and habit. Understanding that doesn't mean rejecting sweetness, it means reclaiming it. Pleasure should be joy, not dependence. When you learn how dopamine truly works, you stop fighting your cravings and start decoding them. You realize that your brain isn't trying to sabotage you, it's trying to help you feel alive. It just needs better ways to do it. The next step is to see what happens after the pleasure, when the sweetness fades and the crash begins. How does sugar affect your focus, your energy, and your clarity of thought? To answer that, we'll follow the sugar from your mouth into your bloodstream and watch how it fuels and confuses the brain's energy system. Part 3. The blood sugar roller coaster. Energy, focus, and fatigue. Imagine it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're at work or school, staring at the screen, eyes heavy. Your focus slips, your motivation drops, and your body quietly whispers, "I need something sweet." You grab a cookie, maybe a candy bar, or pour another cup of coffee with sugar. Within minutes, you feel alive again, alert, energized, ready to go. For a short while, it works. But an hour later, you're even more tired than before. Your mind feels foggy. You're irritated, distracted, maybe even a little anxious. This is the blood sugar roller coaster, the most common invisible cycle running the modern world. The brain's favorite fuel. Your brain runs on one main fuel: glucose, a simple sugar derived from the food you eat. It makes up only about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes nearly 20% of your energy. That's how demanding it is. Every thought, every memory, every movement burns glucose. Without it, neurons can't fire. That's why when your blood sugar drops too low, you can't think straight. Your brain is literally running out of power. The problem isn't that we eat sugar. It's that we eat too much, too fast, too often. The sugar rush: when you eat refined sugar, candy, soda, white bread, pastries, your body digests it almost instantly. Glucose floods your bloodstream and your brain lights up with energy. You feel sharp, focused, and even euphoric, but your body is designed for balance. A sudden flood of glucose triggers a hormonal alarm. The pancreas releases insulin, a hormone whose job is to move sugar out of your blood and into your cells. It works quickly, sometimes too quickly. As glucose levels fall, your brain suddenly loses its fuel supply. The result: the dreaded crash. The crash: one moment you're flying high, the next you're sinking. Fatigue, irritability, brain fog. You reach for another snack, maybe a sugary drink or a muffin. The cycle begins again. This roller coaster doesn't just affect energy, it affects mood. When blood sugar dips, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline, the same stress hormones triggered by danger. They push sugar back into your bloodstream, but they also make you feel anxious, jittery, or on edge. So what starts as a harmless craving for sweetness ends as a cycle of stress. The illusion of focus: many people use sugar as a quick mental boost, especially when studying, working, or staying awake. And it's true, a small rise in blood glucose can sharpen concentration temporarily. But once the spike fades, the crash steals clarity. Your brain goes from laser focus to mental haze. You start rereading sentences, losing words mid-thought, forgetting what you were doing. That's not laziness or distraction, it's your neurons slowing down from lack of fuel stability. Consistent focus requires consistent energy, and refined sugar doesn't provide a dot. It's like lighting a match instead of building a fire. The body under pressure over time, these constant sugar spikes and crashes take a toll. The pancreas, forced to release insulin again and again, becomes less efficient. Cells stop responding properly, a condition known as insulin resistance. When this happens, glucose can't enter the cells as easily, leaving it to circulate in the blood. The brain, paradoxically, begins to starve in the middle of plenty. Insulin resistance is now being linked not only to diabetes, but also to cognitive decline, even Alzheimer's disease, sometimes called type 3 diabetes. The message is clear: what's bad for your blood sugar is bad for your brain. A story in 2 mornings. Let's compare 2 mornings, one powered by refined sugar, the other by balance. Morning 1, you skip breakfast, grab a sweet coffee and a pastry on the way to work. Your blood sugar spikes, giving you a burst of energy. By 10 a.m., you crash, hungry again, restless, reaching for another fix. Morning 2, you have oatmeal topped with berries, nuts, and a spoon of yogurt. The fiber slows down digestion. The natural sugars in the berries release gradually. Your blood sugar rises gently, stays steady, and your mind feels calm and focused for hours. That's the difference between volatility and stability, between being driven by sugar and being supported by it. Sugar and emotion. The blood sugar roller coaster doesn't just drain energy, it shapes emotion. When glucose levels swing wildly, mood swings follow. You feel irritable, impatient, sometimes even depressed. Studies show that unstable blood sugar can amplify symptoms of anxiety and reduce stress resilience. It makes small problems feel bigger and minor stress feel overwhelming. Stable blood sugar, on the other hand, acts like emotional armor. When energy is steady, your nervous system stays calm, your thoughts stay clear, and your reactions stay measured. Balance in your blood often means balance in your mind. The silent drain, the most dangerous part of sugar overload, isn't the crash you feel. It's the fatigue you stop noticing. When your energy fluctuates every few hours, it becomes your normal. You forget what real clarity feels like. Many people live years in this fog, constantly stimulating themselves with caffeine and sweets, never realizing that their brain is simply exhausted. The moment you stabilize your blood sugar through balanced meals, whole foods, and steady eating times, you begin to feel the difference. Focus returns, patience strengthens, hunger calms down, the fog lifts. The science of slow release. So, what keeps your brain stable? Complex carbohydrates, foods rich in fiber like oats, quinoa, beans, and vegetables. Fiber slows glucose absorption, keeping levels steady. Add protein and healthy fats, eggs, nuts, yogurt, avocado, and you create a meal that feeds your neurons consistently. Even fruit, when eaten whole, behaves differently from refined sugar. Its natural fiber slows the rush, turning a spike into a gentle rise. The sweetness lasts longer because it's grounded in structure. Your brain doesn't need more sugar. It needs smarter sugar. The sweet spot of balanced sugar itself isn't the villain. Imbalance is a small treat after a meal. No problem. But sugar on an empty stomach or every couple of hours keeps your brain on a biochemical roller coaster it was never meant to ride. The goal isn't to quit sugar entirely, it's to tame it, to build rhythm instead of chaos. Eat balanced meals, sleep enough, drink water, move your body. These simple habits stabilize insulin, calm cravings, and keep your mental energy constant. When blood sugar flows like a river instead of crashing like waves, you feel it. Deep focus, emotional steadiness, quiet confidence. The bigger picture, the blood sugar roller coaster, teaches us something profound. Your mind follows your metabolism. What feels like moodiness or lack of willpower is often just chemistry, a tired brain asking for steady fuel. When you respond with patience and nourishment instead of sugar, you begin to change not only your energy, but your relationship with yourself. It's not about restriction, it's about respect for your body, your brain, and the balance they've been seeking all along. In our next chapter, we'll explore the emotional side of sugar, why we reach for it not just for energy, but for comfort. We'll see how sweetness becomes a coping mechanism for stress, sadness, and self-soothing, and how to find freedom in awareness. Part 4, the emotional side of sugar, comfort, and control. You've had a long, difficult day, deadlines, traffic, maybe an argument or just the quiet exhaustion that comes from trying to hold everything together. You open the cupboard and see it, a bar of chocolate, a box of cookies, a spoon waiting beside a jar of ice cream. You don't think twice. You take a bite. The sweetness hits your tongue, and for a moment, everything softens. Your body exhales. Your mind quiets. It's not just flavor, it's relief. This is sugar's emotional power. It comforts, it soothes, it listens without judgment, and it's one of the reasons it's so hard to let go. Sugar as self-soothing from childhood. Many of us learn to connect sweetness with safety, the treat after a good grade, dessert after finishing dinner, candy when we're sad or scared. Over time, the message becomes clear: sweet equals comfort. So when life gets hard, our brains remember the pattern. Sugar becomes a form of self-soothing, a reward, a friend, even a kind of therapy. Biologically, it makes sense. Sugar triggers dopamine, the brain's pleasure signal, and serotonin, the neurotransmitter of .com. It lowers cortisol, the stress hormone, temporarily easing tension. That's why during moments of stress or loneliness, sugar feels like medicine. The catch? It's temporary. Once the effect fades, cortisol rebounds and the craving starts again. The comfort crash cycle, it usually goes like this. You feel stressed or low, you eat something sweet, you feel better, the sugar wears off, you feel worse, you eat again. It's not about hunger. It's about emotion. Your body uses sugar as a shortcut to soothe pain. But over time, this comfort crash loop rewires your brain's coping system. Instead of processing emotion, you medicate it with sweetness. It's not weakness, it's habit, a deeply human one. The childhood imprint, think back to your earliest memories of sugar. Maybe it was birthday cake, your grandmother's cookies, or candy from a holiday. Those moments were filled with love, laughter, celebration. Your brain learned something powerful. Sugar isn't just food, it's connection. So as adults, when we reach for sugar, we're not just craving sweetness, we're craving warmth, safety, and belonging. But there's a paradox. The very thing we turn to for comfort can over time increase anxiety and fatigue, making us seek even more of it. It's an emotional feedback loop disguised as a craving. Stress and sugar. When we're under stress, our bodies release cortisol. This hormone tells us to seek energy fast. In ancient times, that meant foraging or hunting. Today, it means the vending machine. Cortisol increases appetite and specifically drives the desire for high-sugar, high-fat foods. They bring quick energy and quick relief. But when stress becomes chronic, daily deadlines, digital noise, emotional strain, the constant cortisol keeps you reaching for sugar again and again. It's not just emotional, it's hormonal. Your body is literally asking for glucose to calm the alarm bells. The irony is that sugar doesn't solve the problem, it amplifies it. The crash that follows triggers even more cortisol, deepening stress instead of easing it.
Sugar, sadness, and reward deficiency. Some researchers describe emotional overeating as a response to reward deficiency syndrome, when the brain's dopamine system is underactive. In this state, life feels dull, unrewarding, gray. Sugar temporarily fills that void by giving the dopamine system a spark.
That's why people struggling with low mood or depression often crave sweets. Their brains are searching for light. But the more often sugar is used for relief, the less sensitive the brain becomes to natural pleasures, laughter, music, conversation. Life feels a little flatter, pushing the cycle deeper. The solution isn't willpower. It's rebuilding your reward system from the inside out. The mindful pause, here's where awareness becomes medicine. Next time you crave something sweet, pause, ask yourself, what am I really hungry for? Is it sugar or is it rest? Is it sweetness or is it kindness? You don't have to say no to the treat. You just have to say yes with awareness. That if you decide to have it, slow down. Taste it. Notice the texture, the smell, the emotion it brings. When you eat mindfully, you turn compulsion into connection. The act of awareness restores control. Over time, your brain learns to trust you again, to find calm without needing a sugar hit. Comfort beyond the craving, replacing sugar's emotional role, isn't about restriction, it's about substitution. You can soothe yourself in many ways that also nourish your brain. A walk outside, a few deep breaths, a call with a friend, music that lifts your spirit, writing down your thoughts instead of eating them. Each time you choose one of these, you teach your nervous system a new pattern. You prove that comfort doesn't have to come in a wrapper. The middle path. It's important to say this clearly. Pleasure is not the enemy. Life without sweetness in any form isn't health, it's deprivation. The goal is not to banish sugar, but to balance it. Enjoying dessert with loved ones, baking for joy, or savoring chocolate slowly, these experiences can be emotionally healing when done consciously. It's when sugar becomes the only source of comfort that it begins to harm. Freedom isn't found in denial, it's found in choice. And when you can say, I could have this, but I don't need it right now, that's true control. The compassion factor, sugar's emotional hold loosens, not through shame, but through compassion. If you judge yourself for craving it, your stress rises and the craving deepens. If you meet it with understanding, of course I want comfort right now, your body relaxes and the craving passes more easily. Awareness breaks the loop, kindness heals it. Every time you pause before reaching for sweetness, you strengthen a new neural pathway, one that leads not to guilt, but to genuine peace. The truth of balance at its core, sugar's emotional power teaches us something beautiful. The human need for sweetness isn't just physical, it's spiritual. We all need sweetness in our lives, affection, laughter, rest, meaning. When those forms of sweetness are missing, we reach for the edible kind. When you feed your heart with friendship, art, sunlight, nature, your craving for sugar often fades on its own. You begin to crave life instead. Emotional eating isn't a flaw, it's a message. It's a signal that something in you is asking for care. The goal is not to silence that voice, it's to listen to it and respond with something real. Sugar can still be part of joy, but it doesn't have to be the only source of it. In the next chapter, we'll look at how this story unfolds in the most vulnerable and formative years, childhood and adolescence, when sugar habits are written into the brain itself. Part 5. Sugar and the Teenage Brain, the Vulnerable Years. Picture a high school cafeteria, trays lined up, vending machines humming, students laughing and scrolling through their phones. In front of them, pizza, fries, soda, sports drinks, candy, energy bars that promise focus but deliver mostly sugar. Now imagine those same students trying to concentrate in class an hour later. Some are restless, others half asleep. A few are anxious without knowing why. It's easy to blame hormones, mood swings, or late nights, but there's another player quietly pulling the strings: sugar. The teenage brain is one of the most remarkable engines in nature. Powerful, fast, and still under construction. And that makes it especially sensitive to what fuels it. A brain still building itself during adolescence, the brain goes through its final major stage of growth. Connections are being pruned and rewired. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, focus, and impulse control, is still maturing. Meanwhile, the limbic system, the emotional center, is already firing at full power. In simple terms, teenagers feel deeply but can't always regulate what they feel. Their brains are primed for excitement, novelty, and reward. And sugar? It's the perfect spark. The teenage dopamine surge. Teen brains release more dopamine in response to rewards than adult brains do. That's why everything feels more intense. Friendships, music, love, risk, and yes, sugar. Each sweet drink or candy lights up the brain's reward center more brightly than it would in an adult. It teaches the brain, this feels amazing. Do it again. The more often those dopamine bursts happen, the more the brain wires around them. It starts expecting that stimulation, shaping habits that can last for life. That's why sugar cravings often begin in childhood and peak in the teenage years, precisely when the brain's pathways for self-control are weakest. The sugar-mood connection. Many teens don't realize how closely their food affects their mood. A breakfast of sugary cereal or energy drinks gives a rush of energy, followed by a crash before lunch. They feel irritable, anxious, or unfocused, and reach for more sugar to cope. It's a miniature version of the blood sugar roller coaster we explored earlier, but in a brain that's still developing. Each spike and crash subtly shapes emotional patterns, teaching the brain to associate sugar with relief and calm. Over time, this creates dependency, not emotional weakness, but biochemical conditioning. The myth of energy drinks and sodas are marketed as fuel for focus and performance, but what they really deliver is a jolt, a combination of caffeine and sugar that overstimulates the nervous system. The initial rush feels like energy, the aftermath feels like exhaustion. Research shows that high sugar diets in teenagers are linked to higher levels of anxiety, poor sleep, and reduced academic performance. It's not that sugar makes them lazy, it makes their brains inconsistent. Periods of hyperfocus are followed by burnout. This isn't about blaming teens, it's about protecting them. Sugar and memory. In animal studies, young rats fed high-sugar diets show reduced activity in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and learning. They learn more slowly, forget more quickly, and show higher levels of inflammation in the brain. Human studies are finding similar patterns. Teenagers who consume large amounts of sugary beverages often perform worse on tests of memory and verbal learning. Their brains show altered connectivity in areas related to attention and impulse control. The brain that learns to depend on sugar for stimulation becomes less efficient at sustaining focus on its own. The hidden emotional cost. Teenagers live in an emotional world that's already intense. Social pressure, identity, school, sleep deprivation, all of it fuels stress. When sugar enters that picture, it offers quick comfort, but also deeper volatility. After the sweetness fades, mood dips. The brain demands another hit to feel balanced again. It's not unlike emotional self-medication. And because the teenage brain is so plastic, meaning adaptable, these patterns get reinforced quickly. That's why habits formed in adolescence often persist into adulthood. The food environment trap. Here's the difficult truth. Teenagers aren't making these choices in isolation. The modern food environment is built around convenience and marketing. Bright packaging, energy slogans, and low-fat labels often disguise high-sugar products. Lunchrooms, gas stations, even school fundraisers push sweet snacks as normal and harmless. One soda doesn't hurt, but when sweetened drinks replace water and dessert becomes daily, the cumulative effect on the brain is profound. Education isn't enough. Teens need environments that make healthy choices easy, accessible, affordable, and appealing. The social side of sweetness. For many teens, sugar isn't just a taste. It's part of belonging, sharing boba tea after school, grabbing frappuccinos with friends, splitting candy at movies. These are moments of connection, and connection is vital. The goal isn't to take that away, it's to help them see what's happening underneath, to understand that the sweetness of those memories doesn't come from sugar itself, but from each other. When teens realize that, they begin to make choices not out of restriction, but out of awareness. The power of awareness is powerful even at a young age. Teaching teenagers how sugar affects their mood and focus helps them feel in control, not judged. Instead of saying, don't eat that, we can say, notice how you feel after it. Does your energy crash? Do you feel anxious or sleepy? Does your concentration change? Curiosity, not criticism, builds self-trust. Once young people experience how stable energy feels when they eat balanced meals with protein, fiber, and healthy fats, they start to crave that stability instead. They realize that calm is its own kind of high. Rewriting the story, the good news is that the teenage brain is adaptable. Even after years of sugar overload, it can rewire quickly with better nutrition and habits. Within weeks of reducing added sugars, attention, sleep, and mood often improve. Neural inflammation decreases, and dopamine pathways reset. The earlier we teach awareness, the more power we give future generations to build healthy, happy minds. A message to parents, teachers, and teens. For parents, the goal isn't perfection, it's presence. Eat together when possible, model balance, and talk openly about food without shame. For teachers, understand that a student's behavior after lunch might not be defiance, it might be blood sugar. And for teens, know that your brain is extraordinary. Everything you feed it, from your meals to your thoughts, becomes part of the person you're becoming. You deserve clarity, calm, and confidence. Sugar doesn't give you those things. You do. The teenage years are the blueprint years when the architecture of the brain is still being built. And though sweetness will always be part of life, it doesn't have to define it. The habits we form young determine not just how we live, but how long our clarity lasts. In our next chapter, we'll see what happens when sugar's influence doesn't stop at youth, when decades of overload begin to affect memory, aging, and even disease. It's the hidden story behind forgetfulness, inflammation, and what some scientists now call type 3 diabetes. Part 6. Sugar and long-term brain health, aging, inflammation, and Alzheimer's. Picture yourself decades from now. You're sitting by a window watching the world outside. You remember faces, voices, moments, the laughter of friends, the taste of summer fruit, the scent of coffee in the morning. Now imagine if slowly those memories began to fade, not just forgotten names, but forgotten connections, the colors of life growing dimmer, the thread of thought unraveling. That is the silent fear of aging, not losing life, but losing self. And research is showing that one of the quietest thieves of memory may not come from outside us, but from what we eat every day, from something as ordinary, as comforting as sugar. The slow burn inside. Every time you eat sugar, your body breaks it down into glucose. Your cells use it for energy, essential, natural, even beautiful when balanced. But when there's too much, too often, the extra glucose reacts with proteins in your body in a process called glycation. Think of glycation as caramelization happening inside you. Sugars stick to proteins, forming sticky compounds known as AGEs, advanced glycation end products. Over time, these AGEs damage tissues, stiffen blood vessels, and inflame the brain. It's a slow, invisible burn, not painful, but persistent. And in the brain, it can quietly erode memory, focus, and cognitive resilience. Inflammation. The quiet fire. Inflammation is the body's way of fighting infection or injury. But when it never turns off, when we're constantly feeding it with sugar, stress, and lack of sleep, it becomes chronic.
Chronic inflammation doesn't just affect the body, it changes the brain. It makes neurons less efficient at communicating. It increases oxidative stress, the buildup of damaging molecules that age the cells from within. Over years, this constant low-grade fire weakens the brain's protective barriers, allowing toxins and inflammatory molecules to pass through. Scientists now believe this process plays a key role in neurodegenerative diseases, especially Alzheimer's. Type 3 diabetes. You've heard of type 1 and type 2 diabetes, conditions where the body struggles to manage blood sugar. But researchers are now using another term for Alzheimer's disease, type 3 diabetes. It's not a separate illness, but a reflection of how closely brain health is tied to glucose metabolism. In Alzheimer's, the brain becomes resistant to insulin, the hormone that helps cells use glucose for energy. As a result, neurons begin to starve even in the midst of abundance. They lose their ability to communicate, to repair, to remember. It's like a city with endless power lines, but no electricity reaching the lights. This connection doesn't mean sugar causes Alzheimer's, but it shows how years of high sugar intake, insulin resistance, and inflammation can raise the risk, one meal at a time. The aging brain and oxidative stress,
The brain is the most energy-hungry organ in your body. Every thought you have burns glucose and oxygen. This constant metabolism produces byproducts, free radicals, molecules that can damage cells if not neutralized by antioxidants. A diet high in sugar increases this oxidative stress, overwhelming the brain's natural defenses. Neurons start to malfunction, synapses, the bridges between brain cells, begin to break down. Over time, these micro-injuries accumulate. They may appear first as forgetfulness, confusion, mood swings, or fatigue, but underneath, the architecture of the brain is changing. The blood-brain barrier under siege, your brain is protected by a thin membrane called the blood-brain barrier. It's a gatekeeper deciding what enters and what stays out. Chronic high blood sugar weakens this barrier, allowing inflammatory molecules and toxins to pass through. Once inside, they trigger immune cells in the brain, called microglia, to attack what they perceive as threats. These microglia aren't precise soldiers. They can damage healthy neurons in their effort to protect. Over decades, this internal battle leaves scars in the brain, the hallmark patterns of cognitive decline. The gift of repair here's the hopeful part. The brain has extraordinary resilience. Even after years of damage, it can repair itself if given the chance. When blood sugar is stabilized, inflammation subsides. When the diet shifts toward whole foods, antioxidants, and healthy fats, neurons begin to rebuild. New synapses form, a process called neuroplasticity. It's never too late. Studies show that older adults who reduce added sugars and follow brain-healthy diets like the Mediterranean or Mind Plan improve memory and cognitive function within months. Even modest changes, cutting soda, replacing desserts with fruit, walking daily, help restore balance. The body forgives when given a reason to. Sugar, sleep, and memory. Sleep is when your brain cleans itself. During deep rest, a system called the lymphatic system flushes out waste products that accumulate during the day. High sugar intake disrupts this process. It shortens deep sleep, increases nighttime awakenings, and raises cortisol, the stress hormone that interferes with memory consolidation. Over time, poor sleep and high sugar become a vicious cycle. Tired brains crave sweets, sweets disturb sleep, and memory suffers. Breaking that loop starts with small choices, balanced meals, evening calm, less screen glow, more darkness and rest. You don't need perfection. You just need rhythm. Real people, real recovery. Meet Aisha, 67 years old. She'd always loved baking, but after years of sugary snacks and late-night desserts, she began forgetting appointments, names, and words. Her doctor mentioned mild cognitive impairment, an early sign of decline. Rather than panic, she made one change at a time, replaced soda with water, switched pastries for fruit, and added a morning walk. Within a few months, her energy lifted. Within a year, her memory tests improved. Her story isn't magic. It's biology returning to balance. The human brain, even in later life, is hungry for healing. It just needs fewer spikes and more steadiness. The sweetness of simplicity longevity isn't found in supplements or miracles. It's found in daily simplicity. A plate of colorful vegetables, olive oil, whole grains, and protein. Movement, rest, sunlight, laughter. Each of these quiet habits reduces inflammation, balances blood sugar, and strengthens the brain. They turn the long, slow burn of glycation into the steady warmth of vitality. Your brain doesn't need a cleanse, it needs consistency. A message of hope sugar story doesn't have to end in fear. Awareness isn't punishment, it's empowerment. When you understand how sugar affects your brain, you can choose clarity over compulsion, energy over exhaustion, memory over forgetfulness. Every time you say no to the unnecessary sweetness, you say yes to a longer, sharper, kinder life. You give your brain the chance to stay what it has always been, the storyteller of who you are. In the next chapter, we'll explore the other side of the story, the nuance often lost in fear, because sugar, in its purest form, is also fuel, the brain's favorite one. The goal isn't to demonize it, but to learn how much and what kind truly nourish us. Part 7, the other side. Does the brain need sugar? After all the warnings, you might be wondering, if sugar does so much harm, why do we still need it at all? Why didn't evolution design a brain that could thrive without it? Here's the truth. Your brain does need sugar. In fact, it's one of the few organs in the body that runs almost entirely on glucose, a simple form of sugar. Without glucose, your neurons can't fire. You wouldn't be able to think, move, remember, or feel. But as with most things in nature, the difference between nourishment and damage comes down to balance. Sugar as fuel. Let's start with the basics. Every cell in your brain depends on glucose for energy dot. On average, your brain consumes about 120 grams of glucose a day, roughly the amount found in 2 bananas or a small bowl of rice. When glucose levels drop too low, from skipping meals, overexercising, or fasting too long, your brain feels it immediately. You might get dizzy, foggy, or irritable. Your body responds by releasing stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to restore balance. That's why sugar isn't the enemy. It's the dose and delivery that matter. The goal isn't to remove sugar, but to supply it steadily and naturally, the way the body evolved to receive it. The difference between glucose and sugar, when we talk about sugar in everyday language, we mean the sweet, refined kind, sucrose, fructose, corn syrup, added to food and drinks. But glucose is broader. It's the end product of digesting most carbohydrates, including grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes. A piece of fruit provides glucose slowly, surrounded by fiber, water, vitamins, and antioxidants. A candy bar delivers it all at once, stripped of balance. In both cases, the brain receives sugar, but one comes with wisdom, the other with chaos. Natural sugars are like a calm river, refined sugars are like a flood. The steady stream, think of your brain as a light bulb. It doesn't need a lightning strike, it needs a steady current. Whole foods, oats, beans, sweet potatoes, apples, quinoa release glucose slowly, creating a constant energy flow. You feel focused, kile. Refined sugars, on the other hand, send voltage spikes, bright for a moment, then dark. Over time, these surges wear down the system, forcing the brain to work harder to maintain balance. The difference is not sweetness, it's stability. The wisdom of the body, your body already knows how to handle sugar when you give it time. When you eat something naturally sweet, your liver stores a portion as glycogen, releasing it back into your bloodstream when your brain needs energy later. This gentle rhythm, intake, storage, release, keeps the brain fueled even between meals. The problem begins when you overwhelm that system. Too much sugar, too fast, too often, the liver fills up, insulin surges, and the elegant rhythm becomes chaos.
What used to be music turns into noise. The brain in ketosis, some people choose to reduce sugar drastically or follow low carbohydrate diets that shift the body into a state called ketosis. In ketosis, the liver breaks down fat into molecules called ketones, which the brain can also use for energy.
Ketones can be beneficial. They burn cleanly, reduce inflammation, and may help in conditions like epilepsy or metabolic disorders. But the brain's preferred fuel is still glucose. Ketosis is a backup generator, not the main power plant. The lesson isn't that sugar is bad or that fat is better. It's that the brain is flexible. It thrives on diversity, not extremes. Sweetness in its natural form, when sugar appears in its natural package, fruit, root vegetables, dairy, it brings more than calories. It delivers fiber, antioxidants, water, and phytochemicals that protect the brain. A ripe peach or a handful of blueberries gives sweetness wrapped in nourishment, like a message from nature that pleasure and health can coexist. Compare that to processed sugar, stripped of context. The body receives sweetness without substance, stimulation without stability. It's not sweetness itself that harms, it's isolation. Sugar separated from nature separates us from balance. Why moderation matters: imagine a pendulum. Swing too far in either direction, total indulgence or total restriction, and the result is tension. Too much sugar floods your system. Too little can leave you fatigued, anxious, or foggy. The middle path is steady nourishment, enough glucose to fuel your brain's brilliance, not so much that it overloads your circuits. Balance doesn't come from counting grams, it comes from awareness. How do you feel after you eat? Do you crash, crave, or feel calm? Your body's feedback is wiser than any label. Sugar and creativity, here's a secret. Some of history's greatest thinkers relied on a bit of sweetness. Writers, artists, and musicians often used tea, fruit, or chocolate to fuel long hours of thought. The brain, in bursts of creative flow, consumes more glucose than usual. But those moments were balanced by long periods of rest, movement, and real food. The problem today is not sugar's existence, it's its constant presence. Creativity, like energy, comes from rhythm, bursts and rests, sweetness and stillness. Reclaiming the meaning of sweet, the word sweet once meant more than taste. It meant tenderness, kindness, gentleness, qualities of the heart. When we call a person sweet, we mean they bring warmth to life. Perhaps the deeper solution to our sugar crisis isn't in the kitchen, but in how we experience sweetness in general. If life itself feels dull or bitter, we reach for sugar to fill the gap. But when we find sweetness in relationships, laughter, music, and gratitude, we don't need as much on the plate. Maybe our craving for sugar is really a craving for joy. Practical sweetness. So how do we keep sugar as friend, not foe? Here are a few simple rhythms. 1. Pair sugar with fiber or protein. Eat fruit with nuts or dessert after a balanced meal. It slows absorption and keeps blood sugar steady. 2. Choose natural over refined. Whole fruit instead of juice, dark chocolate instead of candy, homemade instead of prepackaged. 3. Don't fear small pleasures. A mindful treat enjoyed slowly does less harm than mindless snacking. For rest and move. Sleep and physical activity regulate insulin better than any diet alone. 5. Feed your emotions with presence. Sweetness in life reduces the need for sweetness in excess. The harmony of fuel and feeling when sugar is part of a balanced rhythm, it supports life beautifully. It gives quick energy when you need it, then steps aside for the body's natural systems to take over. The danger lies only when sweetness becomes the center instead of the accent, when every emotion or meal depends on it. Balance means allowing sweetness to exist without letting it rule. It's the art of taking one bite, feeling gratitude, and stopping there, not because you must, but because you're satisfied. A gentle truth, your brain doesn't want punishment. It wants rhythm. It doesn't crave restriction. It craves respect. It doesn't need extremes. It needs harmony. Sugar, in its natural form, is part of that harmony, the energy of sunlight captured in food, transformed into thought and life. The key is remembering the boundary between enough and too much, because even sweetness, when understood, can be sacred. In our final chapter, we'll bring everything together, from biology to emotion, from addiction to balance. We'll look at what it means to live a truly sweet life, one where sugar is no longer the master, but the melody. Part 8. Sweet Balance. The real meaning of a sweet life. It's evening now. You sit at your table, the day behind you, a cup of tea beside you. Maybe a small piece of dark chocolate rests on the saucer. Not a craving, not a reward, just a quiet pleasure. You take a bite, the sweetness melts, soft and balanced. For a moment, everything feels still. This moment of calm, presence, and choice is the real sweetness. The circle completes. We began this journey with a simple question: is sugar really that bad for you? And the answer, after an hour of exploring biology, chemistry, and emotion, is both yes and no. Sugar can cloud the brain, inflame the body, and pull us into addiction, but it can also nourish thought, spark energy, and sweeten memory when it's respected. The real danger was never in the sugar itself. It was in forgetting who was in control. From craving to clarity, throughout history, humans have chased sweetness in honey, in fruits, in life itself. Our ancestors sought it for survival. We seek it now for comfort. The craving isn't evil. It's ancient. It's your body's way of saying, I want to feel alive. But aliveness doesn't come from overindulgence. It comes from awareness, from noticing what truly feeds you. Because when you taste life fully, its beauty, its pain, its color, sugar becomes just one note in the symphony, not the whole song. The science and the soul, we've learned that sugar triggers dopamine and serotonin, giving brief pleasure but long-term imbalance when overused. We've seen how it spikes blood sugar, exhausts the pancreas, clouds focus, and fuels inflammation. We've explored its grip on emotions, the way it comforts loneliness and masks stress, and we've witnessed its role in shaping the developing and aging brain. But we've also discovered the other side, the biology of balance, that glucose in moderation is essential, that fruit, grains, and roots carry sweetness wrapped in wisdom, that our brains thrive not on denial but on rhythm, the gentle rise and fall of nourishment. Science explained the how, but the soul reveals the why. The sweetness beneath the surface, what if our obsession with sugar isn't about taste at all? What if it's about longing for peace, for love, for rest? When life feels bitter, we reach for sweetness. When we feel unseen, we crave comfort. Sugar in those moments becomes a stand-in for something deeper, connection. But real sweetness isn't found in a box or a jar. It's in laughter with friends, in the smell of rain, in the quiet satisfaction of doing something kind. When those forms of sweetness fill your life, food becomes what it was meant to be, nourishment, not anesthesia. The art of balance. Balance isn't about perfect choices, it's about compassionate ones. It's not about counting grams, but listening to rhythms, hunger, fullness, energy, calm. When you eat, ask yourself, does this bring me life or does it take it away? Do I feel light after or heavy, focused or foggy? If the answer leans toward lightness and peace, you're already in balance. The brain loves consistency, not rigidity. It thrives on steady energy, gentle sweetness, natural color, and mindful rest. You don't need perfection to protect it. You just need awareness. The joy of small rituals, a spoon of honey and tea, not a slice of fruit in summer, a bite of dessert shared with someone you love. These moments are sacred when approached with gratitude. When sweetness is savored, not swallowed, it transforms from compulsion into communion. In Japan, there's a saying, one sweet is enough for happiness. It's not about denial, it's about appreciation. Pleasure, when respected, multiplies. Healing the relationship. For years, we were told to fear sugar, to see it as poison, but fear creates rebellion. When we label something forbidden, it gains power. Healing your relationship with sugar begins when you stop fighting it, when you allow it to exist, but no longer let it lead. You become the one who decides when and why. You choose sweetness rather than being chosen by it. That's freedom, not in the absence of sugar, but in the presence of peace. The rhythm of a sweet life. A truly sweet life isn't built on restriction or indulgence, it's built on rhythm. Fuel the brain gently. Eat whole foods, low carbs, healthy fats. Rest deeply. Sleep restores your chemistry and clarity. Move often. Exercise stabilizes insulin and emotions. Feel everything. Let yourself experience joy, sadness, and calm without numbing them. Savor slowly. Taste every bite like it's the first. When you live this way, sugar finds its natural place, not the driver's seat, but a passenger, sometimes quiet, sometimes joyful, never in control. The wisdom of sweetness, there's an old Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It means that peace isn't found in doing something different. It's found in doing the same things with new awareness. The same is true for eating. You'll still have dessert, still add honey to your tea, but now you'll do it consciously as an act of gratitude, not escape. You'll taste the sweetness and know it's enough. The gift of choice. When you understand sugar, you reclaim your power. You no longer need to chase pleasure. You create it. You no longer fear food. You befriend it. Your brain thrives not in denial, but in partnership. It asks for energy, not excess. And when you give it that, when you feed it calmly, kindly, consistently, it rewards you with clarity, focus, and peace. You become both scientist and artist, studying your biology while painting your own balance. The final reflection, sweetness will always be part of life, in food, in people, in moments. It's not meant to be conquered or feared, but understood. When you listen to your body and honor its needs, sugar loses its power. It becomes what it was always meant to be: a small joy, a fleeting pleasure, a reminder that life can be gentle. So take that next sweet moment, whatever it may be, and savor it, not as escape, but as celebration. Because the sweetest life isn't one without sugar. It's one where you taste everything: joy, effort, silence, connection, and call it enough.